السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحابته ومن استنى بسنته وهديه إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Inshallah ta'ala, we continue with our next session of Monday Night Boost. We're going to continue inshallah ta'ala with the 12th hadith, hadith number 12. So without further ado, let's get started inshallah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وبعد. So let's have somebody read this hadith for us, inshallah ta'ala. Do we have any volunteers here? Dawood, can you read the hadith for me? Bismillah. Let's hear, inshallah.
Part of perfection of someone.
Louder, louder. Read from the very beginning. From the very beginning at the top.
Narrated from Abu Huraira, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, part of the perfection of someone's Islam is his leaving alone that which does not concern him.
Excellent, right? So this hadith is a very important hadith. It's a very small hadith, but wallahi, this hadith involves your entire life. And there's, countless benefits that you can derive from this one small, short hadith alone. So Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu, and Abu Huraira is no stranger to us. We're well acquainted with who Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu was. We've already spoken about his life, who he was. So you can refer to that previous recording, inshallah ta'ala, where we explained who he was and just mentioned a small biography of his life. So Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he narrates this hadith and he says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, مِنْ حُسْنِ إِسْلَامِ الْمَرْءِ تَرْكُهُ مَا لَا يَعْنِي. That from the perfection of somebody's Islam is that they leave off what does not benefit them. Right? From the perfection of somebody's Islam is that they leave off what does not benefit them. Now this hadith right here, some scholars, they have some speech when it comes to this hadith. Is this hadith a sahih hadith or not? Is this hadith weak? Is it authentic? Is it a hasan hadith? And as you know, we previously touched on this point that the scholars of hadith, they have many different conditions when it comes to accepting a hadith. Every single authentic hadith, the thousands of authentic hadiths that we have, there are certain conditions that the scholars of hadith look for before they would say that this hadith is authentic. And when any one of these conditions are not present, when they're not fulfilled, then they would say that the hadith is da'if. For example, amongst those conditions is that everybody in the chain of narrators, they all had to have heard the hadith from each other. So for example, let's say Imam Abu Dawud, he narrates a hadith. And then somewhere down the line in the chain, you have one person narrating from somebody else who it's impossible for them to have met. Because we know that one narrator died 100 years before this narrator was born, for example. Right? It's impossible for them to have met. Or they lived in completely different areas and they never traveled outside of their city. Things like this is the scholars of hadith, they would look for to find out if there's some breakage in the chain, if there's some hidden defect in the chain. Also, what they would look at is they would also look at the religious integrity of each narrator. For example, if there was a narrator that was known for committing open sins, they would not accept his narration. It had to be a righteous Muslim, somebody who was outwardly a righteous Muslim. Now obviously, we don't know what's inside of people's hearts. But the hadith scholars, they would scrutinize the religious integrity of the narrators themselves. Like I said, if there was a narrator that would drink alcohol, if there was a narrator that was known for lying, they would completely reject this person's hadith. Also, when it comes to a narration that has a narrator in it that had a weak memory, then they would put some doubts when it comes to accepting that hadith. So this particular hadith, the scholars of hadith, they have many different statements about it. Some hadith scholars say that it's sahih. Other hadith scholars say it's hasan, which means a good hadith, but it's not like sahih. Right? So anytime you hear a khatib on the minbar, anytime you hear a sheikh or somebody in the masjid or somebody giving a lecture, or you read it in a book, a hadith is sahih, then you can accept it inshallah. If you hear that a hadith is hasan, hasan means that the hadith is good, but there's a small, slight weakness in it. Okay, it's not as strong as sahih, but it's still authentic. So Imam Nawawi, he mentioned that this hadith is hasan. Many scholars of hadith like Shaykh al-Bani said that this hadith is sahih. And you have many different statements. And like I said, some of the hadith scholars, they put some, they mentioned that this hadith in its chain has some issues. But let's not talk about that right now. But what the scholars have agreed upon is that the meaning of this hadith is correct and it's authentic. And it's something that, that is supported by other hadiths as well. So the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us, "Min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni." That from the perfection of somebody's Islam is that they leave off what does not benefit them. So let's talk about what that means now, inshallah ta'ala. The first benefit that we can get from this is that there are different levels of Islam. There are different levels of Islam. And how do we get that there's different levels of Islam? Is that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that from the perfection of one's Islam is that he leaves off what does not benefit him. In other words, the more you leave off what doesn't benefit you, the more perfect your Islam is. And the more you engage yourself in stuff that does not benefit you, the weaker and the more deficient your Islam is. Is everybody clear on how we got that point? This is one of the points that the scholars have mentioned. So that shows us that Islam is in levels. Islam is in levels. Us as Muslims, we all have that base level of Islam. We all have that base level of Islam, but we differ in how perfect we make our Islam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we all perfect our Islam. Ameen. And this hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells us about perfecting your Islam. He says, إِذَا أَحْسَنَ أَحْدُكُمْ إِسْلَامَهُ فَكُلُّ حَسَنَةٍ يَعْمَلُهَا تُكْتَبُ لَهُ بِعَشْرِ أَمْثَالِهَا. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that that whenever one of you perfects his Islam, right? This should be a goal of ours, right? We should want to perfect our Islam. Whoever perfects his Islam from you, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will write for each good deed 10 times the amount of that good deed. Right? So every good deed you do, and this is going to come up in, I believe, hadith number 37 of the 40 hadith. We're only in hadith number 12. But when that comes up, there's a whole hadith that talks about how much reward you get for your deeds. So we're going to save the discussion about that later on, inshallah ta'ala. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that every deed you do, once you perfect your Islam, is going to be multiplied by 10. Right? It's going to be multiplied by 10. إِلَى سَبْعِ مِئَةِ ضِعْفٍ. And the Prophet ﷺ, he continues and he says up to 700 times. Up to 700 times. And you know, a lot of people, they have this misconception. They say that how in Ramadan your deeds are 70 times. Some people say in Ramadan your deeds are 700 times. There's no authentic hadith that specifies Ramadan and gives it a specific number to how much your deeds are going to be multiplied. Right? Is everybody clear on this? There's no hadith like this. Right? There's one hadith that's weak, but there's no hadith like this. And this is, this is very common on the tongues of people. They say that, oh, in Ramadan, your deeds are 70 times more. But that's not the case. Of course, we're not saying that your deeds are not counting more. But to say a specific number, we need to have specific text for that. Because the default rule is that when it comes to the knowledge of the unseen, the amounts of your deeds, that's from the knowledge of the unseen. And because we are living in a world where we can only see things that are apparent, we can't speak about the knowledge of the unseen unless we have knowledge of that. Unless we have some knowledge from revelation. Because without the revelation in the first place, we wouldn't even know about that. So how could we affirm something about the knowledge of the unseen when we didn't have any knowledge about that in the first place? Right? So we don't really know about the amount of our deeds except if we have an authentic hadith. And like I said, this hadith is Bukhari and Muslim, it's an authentic hadith. So you either get 10 deeds or 10 times the reward of one deed according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala up to 700 times. So Allah has that choice, Allah has that ability to multiply your deeds however much He wants. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, continuing his statement, and he said, وَكُلُّ سَيِّئَةٍ يَعْمَلُهَا تُكْتَبُ لَهُ بِمِثْلِهَا. And every bad deed that you do, then you will be held accountable for that deed. It will be written the same amount of good deeds that you do. In other words, of bad deeds that you do. In other words, if you do a bad deed, you get 1 sin. If you do a good deed, you get 10 rewards up to 700. So let's think about the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if somebody goes to Jahannam, if somebody has his deeds on the Day of Judgment, his bad deeds outweigh his good deeds. Think about how much good deeds this person didn't do. Like think about that. You have 10 times the chance of outweighing your bad deeds. Right? Think about the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah wanted, could He have made our good deeds just count as one good deed, as one reward? Absolutely. But it's because of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He only counts your bad deeds as 1 sin. As 1 sin. But when it comes to the reward, it's 10 times up to 700 times. Right? Up to 700 times. And as I said, this statement that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made, he began this statement by saying, if one of you perfects his Islam, right? You need to perfect your Islam. Now the thing is, brothers and sisters, is that this is the general rule for every Muslim. This is the general rule for every Muslim. And we're going to talk about that statement. The Prophet ﷺ, he says it in another hadith. We're going to talk about that inshallah. he speaks about perfecting one's Islam. And that hadith is recorded in the Sahih of Imam Muslim, narrated by Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhum. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and we should know who Ibn Mas'ud was, he narrated the fourth hadith that we spoke about in our class. Ibn Mas'ud, he said that, قال Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, that some people said to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they said, Ya Rasulullah, they said, O Messenger of Allah, أَنُؤَاخَذُ بِمَا عَمِلْنَا فِي الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. These people who accepted Islam, they became Muslims during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They said, O Messenger of Allah, will we be held accountable for the bad deeds that we've done in Jahiliyyah? Some people, before they accept Islam, they used to live terrible lives. Some people used to commit murder during the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Some people used to bury their children alive. Allah tells us about this in the Quran. They used to bury their children alive. They used to, do really bad sins, commit zina, make tawaf naked, do things like this, right? Go around the Kaaba naked and commit shirk, which is the greatest sin. So they said, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, will we be held accountable for what we did before we accepted Islam? So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, أَمَّا مَنْ أَحْسَنَ مِنْكُمْ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ فَلَا يُؤَاخَذُ بِهَا. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that, as for those who perfect their Islam from you, then they will not be held accountable. Think about how beautiful that is, right? That if somebody accepts Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wipes away all of their bad deeds. Right? When they enter into Islam, it's like they're a newborn baby. They have no sin against them. Right? They have no sin against them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives them of their sins. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, when one of you perfects his Islam, then he will not be held accountable for the deeds that he did before he accepted Islam. And then he says, وَمَنْ أَسَاءَ. And if somebody has a bad Islam, they did not enter into Islam properly, the Prophet ﷺ said, أُخِذَ بِعَمَلِهِ فِي الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ وَالْإِسْلَامِ. If somebody enters into Islam and they don't perfect their Islam, then they'll be held accountable for the sins of Jahiliyyah before Islam and the sins that they have done while they have entered into this, this weak, deficient form of Islam. So the scholars, they explain this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, if you perfect your Islam, then you're not going to be held accountable for the deeds that you did before you accepted Islam. Does it mean that you have to be a perfect Muslim all of the time? The scholars, they say no. The scholars, for example, Imam Nawawi, he explains this. Imam Nawawi, he says that when the Prophet ﷺ says that if somebody enters into Islam with a deficient Islam, that means somebody who is a munafiq. Some people, they enter into Islam, but they don't really have it in their hearts. Some people, I'm going to give you a perfect example of this. You have some people, you have some brothers or sisters, they fall in love with a non-Muslim. In Islam, there's certain non-Muslims you cannot get married to. For example, if the person is an atheist or Hindu, you can't marry them. Okay? Sometimes you have some people, because they want to marry a Muslim, they take their shahada at the wedding day, or they take the shahada like a month before, just so that the family can say, mashallah, my child has married a Muslim. Right? So the non-Muslim, the kafir, he says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And he doesn't have anything inside of his heart. There's so many examples of this, right? So many examples of this. And brothers and sisters, if you know somebody like this, then don't lose hope in them. Don't lose hope in them, because there are many examples where you have non-Muslims, they say the shahada, and they don't really mean it, but when they get married and they learn more about Islam, they become better Muslims, more practicing Muslims than the Muslim spouse that they said the shahada to marry in the first place. Right? Many examples of this, right? Many stories of this. And perhaps, maybe some of you guys who are sitting here, you have experience in this. Maybe this was your story in the past. But the Prophet ﷺ, he's saying that whoever perfects his Islam, in other words, whoever is sincere in his Islam, whoever sincerely accepts Islam, not that you're a perfect person, we can never be perfect, right? Then you're not going to be held accountable for the bad deeds that you did before. But if you entered into Islam with a deficient Islam, it wasn't in your heart, you just said it with your tongue, but you did not believe in your heart, then you'll be held accountable for the deeds of Jahiliyyah, because you were never a Muslim in the first place. Right? You're never a true Muslim in the first place. So if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're entering into Islam, you want to be a Muslim, and you want Allah to forgive you of your sins, right? What we mean by perfecting your Islam is to be a Muslim sincerely. Not that you have to be a perfect Muslim. So that's, I just want to mention those two narrations because they have to do with this concept of perfecting one's Islam. There's a perfection of Islam that we all must have, and then there's another level of perfection, another level above that. Right? You need to perfect the base, requirements, the minimum requirements of Islam for you to be a Muslim. And like I said, if somebody enters into Islam sincerely and they really want to change their life for the better, they want to, meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with, in a good way, then this person, inshallah ta'ala, and they do all of the, they pray their salah, they fast in Ramadan, they pay their zakat, they have a plan to make the hajj if they haven't done it already. Right? If a person is like this and they're sincere, then they've perfected the base amount, the minimum requirements of what they need to be a Muslim. Okay, is everybody clear on this? Yeah, we have a question here. Yeah, do we have the mic? Jazakallah khairan.
What happens if you say the Shahada and don't mean it, but then become a better Muslim later on?
I mean, if you say the Shahada and you don't mean it, but then what do you mean, what happens? If you start practicing more, I mean, the thing is if somebody says the Shahada, and, they don't really mean it, okay, then it's not going to be an accepted Shahada by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But some of the scholars, they talk about this issue. For example, Ibn Abil Aiz, one of the scholars of Creed, he was a Hanafi scholar, he mentioned, he spoke about the issue of somebody who didn't really say the Shahada sincerely, or they may never have said the Shahada, but they come in and they live among the Muslims and they do everything that a Muslim does. Meaning, like, they're a Muslim. The only thing is that they have not said the Shahada because nobody told them about it, or they didn't realize how important the Shahada was. Right? And and they, of course, they were saying in their salah. Every single salah you say the Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. So the person, if a person prays salah, they're saying the Shahada. But that original Shahada would not be valid, because all acts of worship, as we've mentioned, they are, the prerequisite of all acts of worship to be accepted is the niyyah. You must have that sincere intention. If you're doing it for the people to see you, then it's not going to be valid at all. So the thing is if this person, inshallah ta'ala, do they need to say the Shahada? Inshallah ta'ala, like Ibn Abil Aiz mentions, that this person is a Muslim. They take the ruling of a Muslim. If they do all of the acts of a Muslim, even if they didn't say the Shahada. But like I said, when somebody prays Salat, they're saying the Shahada 5 times a day. Right? They're saying the Shahada 5 times a day. If you look at a 4 rak'at prayer, you're saying it in the first tashahhud and the second tashahhud as well. So at least like 12, 13 times a day you're saying the Shahada. So inshallah ta'ala, this person is a Muslim, right? But it's best to say it again, right? It's best to say it again, yeah. We have a question here? Okay, so the thing is that if somebody is saying the Shahada, and for certain, like the guy, he's like, in the example, let's use the example that you gave. Let's say a Muslim sister, she meets a guy at college, or whatever the case is, at work. He's Christian, right? He's Christian, and they fall in love, and she's like, I can't be with you unless you accept Islam. And he says, okay, all right, I'm just going to say the Shahada just to be with you. And if she knows that, if he says it, we don't know what's in the hearts of people. So if you have any suspicions about, this guy's a kafir, he's only saying it to get married, you can't say that. Right? Beware of this, right? We spoke about that issue of delving into people's hearts. You don't know that. If you know of somebody saying the Shahada to marry a sister, you don't know if they're really doing it to marry the sister. But if you know that the guy in this particular scenario, if you know that he said, I'm only going to say the Shahada to marry you, then you know that you can't accept it unless he does it sincerely. Is everybody clear on this? So if she marries him knowing that he's only saying the Shahada and he's admitted it, right? She can't be like, oh, you're only saying it to marry me, where he didn't express it openly. If he expressed it openly that he's only saying the Shahada to marry her, then she can't marry him, because he's not saying that sincerely. And he proved it because he said so. Right? But if he just says the Shahada and she doesn't know about what's in his heart, then she can marry him. He's a Muslim. Right? We judge by what is apparent. Not saying that we judge people, but you have to look at the state of somebody. If somebody's a Muslim, then they can marry from the Muslims. But if somebody, he can marry the Muslim women. But in this particular scenario, if he remains a Christian or he's not sincere, then she cannot marry him. And this is a very, touchy issue when it comes to, can a Muslim marry a non-Muslim? You have many Muslim women out there, and Muslim men, they're married to non-Muslims. And in some cases, to make things very simple, the only time a Muslim can marry a non-Muslim is a Muslim man marrying a Jewish woman or Christian woman. That's it. Everything else will not be allowed. And that's by consensus of the scholars. So let me repeat that one more time. The only case in Islam where it's permissible, it's halal and it's lawful for a Muslim to marry a non-Muslim is when a Muslim man, not a woman, a Muslim man marries a Christian woman, not a Christian man, a Christian woman or a Jewish woman. That's it. If a Muslim man, he marries an atheist, it's not going to be a valid nikah. If a Muslim man marries a Buddhist, or he marries a Hindu, or whatever other religion besides Ahlul Kitab, besides the Jews and the Christians, then it's not going to be an accepted nikah. And like I said, there's no difference of opinion about this particular issue. So, I met one sister. She said that she did like a court marriage without any nikah. Okay, meaning that they never had any nikah. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that there's no nikah without a wali and without 2 witnesses. This sister, all she did was just sign a paper. She signed the paper and then that was it. Right? There was no nikah done, Islamic nikah. If there's no Islamic nikah done, there's no Islamic marriage. Okay? According to the court, that's a court marriage. That's one thing. But Islamic marriage is something different. Is everybody clear on this? So don't think that when you go to the marriage court, you sign the paper, and they said, I lawfully pronounce you husband and wife. Whatever they say, don't think that you're married according to Allah. You have to follow Allah's rules and how He wants you to be married for you to actually be married in His sight. So hopefully that answers the question, inshallah. So we spoke about the issue of deeds done in Jahiliyyah. So now the next issue that we're going to talk about, the Prophet ﷺ, he says that from the perfection of somebody's Islam is that they leave off what does not concern them, what does not have anything to do with them. Now the next issue that I want to talk about is, would it be permissible for somebody to say, I'm a Muslim, inshallah? Right? Would it be permissible for somebody to say, I'm a Muslim, inshallah? For example, when somebody says inshallah, that means that it's something that they're putting to the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the will of Allah. They're saying inshallah. Inshallah means if Allah wills. To some people, inshallah means, I'm telling you I'm not coming to your house when you're inviting me, but I'm not telling you no, so I'm going to tell you inshallah. This is how a lot of Muslims use inshallah, and that's really incorrect. That's really incorrect, right? To say that inshallah I'm coming, but then you have no intention, you have no hope, and you're invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name. That's a bit problematic. But when it comes to saying inshallah I'm a Muslim, can we say inshallah I'm a Muslim or inshallah I'm a believer? What do you guys think? Can we say that? I see you shaking your head. Why? Let's get the...
Because it sounds like you're doubting in the mercy of Allah.
Good. It sounds like they're doubting that they're Muslim. It sounds like they're doubting that they're Muslim. Okay, does anybody else think that it will be okay to say it? Anyone? Does everybody agree? Is there ijma' here with Ibrahim? Anyone? There's consensus? Where's the ikhtilaf? Come on. Anyone? You think that it's okay? Would it be any cases permissible if somebody says, I'm a Muslim, inshallah? Yeah, let's get the mic here.
It would defeat the entire purpose of the shahada in the first place. It would defeat the entire purpose of the shahada.
Say it on the mic, inshallah.
It would defeat the entire purpose of the shahada in the first place.
Okay, good, right? It would defeat the entire purpose of the shahada in the first place. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا. Allah, He says that the believers are only, meaning whatever Allah is going to tell you, those are the those are only the qualities of the true believers. If somebody doesn't have one of these qualities that Allah is going to mention, then they disqualify themselves from being a believer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا. That the believers are only, nobody else are believers except this group. Right? The believers are only those who believe in Allah and believe in His Messenger, ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا. Then they don't have any doubt. So if you want to have, if you have doubts that Allah even exists, then according to Allah, you're not a believer. If you have doubts that if Islam is a true religion or not, then you are not a believer according to Allah. Allah says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَا يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. That whoever seeks any religion besides Islam, it will not be accepted from him. Some people, they say, oh, this celebrity is a good person, he's going to go to Jannah. You can't say that. Not that you put people in Jannah, you put people in hell. But the point is that we have to understand that the only religion acceptable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Islam. So Allah expects us not to have any doubt. Now of course, does doubt come to us? Does doubt come to us sometimes? Of course, sometimes you may be sitting down, a doubtful thought comes to you. You're thinking about qadr, you're thinking about this, you're thinking about that. Right? We spoke about this. What should you do? Seek Allah's refuge. Say amantu billah, say that I believe in Allah. Right? Try to ward off these thoughts. Right? But a believer is one who does not have these doubts. Okay? So if somebody says, I'm a Muslim, inshallah, then according to what the brothers have mentioned, then this indicates that they have doubts. Now the scholars, they have difference of opinion about this. Some scholars say it's haram to say this completely because of the same reasons that the brothers have mentioned. Other scholars, they say that it's perfectly fine to say this. But then there's a middle view that the scholars have mentioned, and this is the correct view. That if somebody says, I'm a Muslim inshallah, doubting the base of their Islam, doubting the basis of their Islam, they're saying, I'm a Muslim inshallah, like I don't know if I'm a Muslim or not. Right? I'm not, I don't know if I'm a Muslim. I'm agnostic. I'm leaning towards atheism. Some Muslims, they say, I'm a Buddhist Muslim. I'm a Jewish Muslim. I'm a Christian Muslim. It can't happen. Right? If somebody has doubts in their Islam, the scholars, they say that if somebody says, I'm a Muslim inshallah, with that intention, then that's haram. And this is something that may take a person out of Islam if they, verbally express that they're not convinced of Islam. Right? But there's another case where it is permissible, is if somebody says, I'm a Muslim inshallah, and they intend by that the perfection of Islam. Meaning, I'm a Muslim, but I hope that I'm a Muslim that Allah expects me to be, in terms of perfecting those acts that a Muslim has to perfect. Right? For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Allah says that the believers are only those that when Allah's name is mentioned, their hearts tremble. Some of us, we mention Allah's name and we laugh. Some of us, we make jokes about Allah. Some of us, we make jokes about Islam. We joke about things. Right? Whenever Allah's name is mentioned, it's like whatever. It's like anybody else's name that's mentioned. Right? But Allah mentioned that the believers are only those that when Allah's name is mentioned, their hearts tremble. Right? Their hearts tremble. So if you intend by saying that inshallah, I'm a Muslim to this degree, then it's permissible. Right? As long as you're not doubting the basis of your Islam that is allowing you to continue to be a Muslim, right? So you can only say I am a Muslim inshallah if you're intending that you're a perfect Muslim, or you're perfect, that you're doing the best that you can as a Muslim, and you're fulfilling all of those deeds that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects from you. Because we're all deficient, we all make mistakes, right? So that's the case in which it will be permissible to say that. So from this, from our discussion, you can see that Islam has different levels. And remember, when Jibreel, when he asked the Prophet ﷺ what Islam was, he said Islam is 5 things. Islam is the Shahada, Islam is Salah, Islam is Zakah, Islam is fasting in Ramadan, and Islam is what? Hajj to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what he said. Did the Prophet ﷺ mention this? That he mentioned in this hadith? No. He said Islam is the 5 pillars. Does it mean that Islam is only the 5 pillars? No. From this hadith, we know that from the perfection of one's Islam is that he leaves off what does not benefit him. So Islam is much more vast than that hadith that we spoke about at the beginning. And that's why the scholars, they extract from that hadith that when the Prophet ﷺ says that Islam is those 5 things are the pillars of Islam that Islam is built upon. Islam has much more than that. Right? If you do those basic things, then you're a Muslim, inshallah. But if you want to perfect your Islam, you want to be at a higher level, then you need to leave off also things that do not benefit you. So another benefit that we get from this hadith is that it shows us that we should be motivated. We should be motivated. The Prophet ﷺ didn't say that it's haram to engage in what doesn't benefit you, because sometimes that happens. You talk about things that don't benefit you. We engage in things that have nothing to do with us, whether it's haram or halal. But the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't specify a particular ruling. He just said that from the perfection of one's Islam is that he should leave off what does not benefit him. In other words, you as a Muslim, you should be like, whether it's haram things or whether it's halal things, whatever it is, if it's not going to benefit me, let me try to make this my life goal, that I'm going to leave off whatever does not benefit me. Right? You should have some type of motivation when you hear this hadith. And I just want to talk about this issue that people are engaged in things that have nothing to do with them. Right? And I'm going to read to you a quote that I really like this quote. It's true for a lot of people. If you really reflect on your lives and those around you, you're going to know exactly what this quote means. Okay? The quote is, great minds discuss ideas. Great minds discuss ideas. I mean, you kind of put yourself wherever this quote is putting you, right? Think about your own self when you hear this. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. Think about that. If you find people that just talk about other people all of the time, according to this quote, and like I said, I'm not reading this quote as if it's wahi, as if it's revelation, right? It's just something for us to think about, right? Small minds discuss people. Average minds discuss events. This happened last week. That happened, this is going to happen next week, right? This happened in this country. That happened over here, right? Average minds, people are going to talk about the things that happen around them. But, great minds discuss ideas, right? Discuss ideas, things that are of benefit, right? So kind of think about where you put yourself. Do you find that all day you're talking about people? You're talking about what this one said and what that one said. And some people may be like, well, you know what? I'm not backbiting. I'm not doing anything bad. But the Prophet ﷺ said that from the perfection of one's Islam is that he leaves off what does not benefit him. Some of us, we're sitting all day and we're watching a TV show and we're experts on the lives of fictional characters who don't exist. But when it comes to our day-to-day life and knowing the things that we really need, we neglect those things. Right? Some of us, like if you ask us, the life history of some of these anime characters, we'll be able to tell you. Some of the TV show characters will be able to tell you their intricate lives. Yeah, this character in episode number 459, he went over here in this village and he did this and that and all of this stuff. Right? We know intricate things about stuff that have nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with us. That's fictional characters. Some of us, we're into celebrities. We know exactly about what Justin Bieber is doing. Right? We're like an expert on Bieber's life. Bieber doesn't even know you exist. But you know everything about his life. You know the new hairstyle that he's having. You know about what he has in his salad that he took a picture of and he put it on Instagram. You know about all of these little things. Stuff that has no benefit in your life, can't help you at all. Right? So the thing is that the Prophet ﷺ, he's speaking about these issues that I've just mentioned. Right? So really think about it. This hadith involves your entire life. Somebody might read this hadith and be like, well, I know that already. From the perfection of one's Islam to leave off what doesn't benefit him. Okay, everybody knows that. But really, it's not about what you know, it's about what you implement. Right? It's about what you act upon. Okay? You find that the majority of problems that Muslims face is because of the basic things that everybody knows. For example, we all know that we have to be conscious of Allah. Right? We hear in every khutbah, like at least 4 or 5 times, وَاتَّقُوا Yeah? Right? يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ. Fear Allah. But you find that there are scholars who don't follow this. That they are ignorant people who don't follow this. But yet everybody has that basic understanding that, Allah is watching me. But yet people don't follow it. Right? So it's not just about what you know, but think about how much you implement. Right? That's really what's important. So let's talk about some things that people do that we do. Right? Let's not talk about, people do these things. No, we do these things. I do these things. Right? We all have these problems that we need to iron out. Right? We all have those problems that we have to fix. And this is a reminder for myself first and foremost. Let's talk about some things that people do that have nothing to do with them. For example, being nosy. Being nosy. A benefit that you get from this hadith is not to try to dig into people's lives. Some people, you come to the masjid and a brother, he's going to ask you about your whole life. Oh, akhi, what'd you have for dinner last night? Akhi, where exactly do you work? And they want to know about every single thing about your life. And a lot of people, a lot of people are jealous. A lot of people just want to know things about your life so that they can be better and so that they can, spread their information around. Like I said, you shouldn't be suspicious of people, but this is a reality, right? You have people that are just so obsessed about the things that are happening in other people's lives. So don't be nosy. From a benefit from this hadith is leaving out things that have nothing to do with you. If it has nothing to do with you, leave it alone. Right? You have so many things that should benefit you, things that you need to worry about. Right? So many things that you need to worry about in the first place. Now, some people use this hadith and they say that, sometimes we advise each other. Right? Some of us, we say, akhi, you can't be doing this, it's haram. Some people, they say, akhi, it has nothing to do with you. The Prophet ﷺ said, from the perfection of one's Islam is to leave off what does not concern him. So what I'm doing with my life doesn't concern you. Right? Some people use this hadith to, prove their point. What is your response to this? What do you guys think? Why is this person using this hadith wrong? If you advise somebody and they tell you, what I'm doing doesn't concern you, leave off what does not concern you. Can this person say that? Using this hadith as proof? Anyone? Yes, but Akram.
No, because we've been commanded to command the good and forbid evil.
Excellent, right? It's everybody's obligation to command the good and to forbid the evil. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that whoever sees an evil, what should he do? Stop it with his hand. If he's not able to do that, he should stop it with his tongue. He should speak out against it. If he can't stop it with his tongue, what should he do? Hate it in his heart, and that's the weakest of Iman. So if you see an evil, it's your obligation to stop it with your hand if you can. And this is only if you have authority. If you don't have authority, then you stop it with your tongue. You try to speak out against it. You try to advise the person. You try to give the person da'wah. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that by the one in whose hand lies my soul, you will command the good and you will forbid the evil. And if you do not, then soon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send a punishment upon you. ثُمَّ تَدْعُونَهُ فَلَا يُسْتَجَابُ لَكُمْ. And then you will call upon Allah, make dua to Allah to remove this punishment from you, and then your du'as will not be answered. We spoke about this hadith in our last class, right? when it comes to the etiquettes of dua, that you have to command the good and forbid the evil. So commanding the good and forbidding the evil concerns everybody. So nobody can say that, okay, this hadith means that you should worry about yourself. No. If you see an evil, it concerns you, right? This hadith says that from the perfection of your Islam is to leave off what doesn't concern you. It concerns you to stop the evil that you're seeing around you. So don't think that, this hadith is telling me I have to worry about myself. No, if you see your brother doing something wrong, advise him. Right? Like I said, this doesn't mean that you go to somebody and you say, haram akhi, you're going to Jahannam, Allah will punish you. You need to stop, you're such a bad Muslim. No. Allah will never forgive you. Never say things like this. You have to use hikmah. You have to be wise, Like, there's like this story of somebody who was making wudu wrong. And these young youth, instead of telling the old man that your wudu is wrong and having a debate, the youth, they said to the old man, can you show us how to make wudu, old man? And the old man, he then shows them how to make wudu. And then the kids, they say, well, some people say that we should do it like this. And the old man, he says, oh yes, I remember. Because if you immediately attack somebody, what's their immediate reaction? Is to defend themselves. That's natural. If you feel that anybody's attacking you, no matter what they're saying, if it's right or wrong, your immediate reaction is to defend yourself. Right? So you want to be smart how you command the good and forbid the evil. So the thing is that commanding the good and forbidding the evil given da'wah has to do with all of us. And some of us, we think that da'wah is only given to non-Muslims. I've heard people say this myself. People say that giving da'wah to Muslims, that doesn't make any sense. You have to give da'wah to non-Muslims. But no, da'wah means calling to Allah. And giving da'wah to Muslims is more important to giving da'wah to non-Muslims. Because what happens? We give da'wah to non-Muslims, we get the shahada, and then we forget about them. Right? We come in, everybody says, Takbir, Allahu Akbar, everybody's ready to hug their brother. But then later on, the brother has questions, nobody wants to talk to him. Nobody wants to talk to him. It's a problem. Right? So the thing is, da'wah, Muslims need da'wah as well. Muslim needs to be reminded. We all need to be reminded. We all need to be taught. Never think that you know everything. All right? So these are some benefits that we get from this hadith. Also, another thing that people do when it comes to not implementing this hadith is talking about things that they don't know. People are talking about things that have nothing to do with them in the way that they don't know about the things that they're talking about. People are talking about Islam, they have no idea about Islam. People are going up on the minbar, giving a khutbah, saying things that are completely wrong. And the community, the jama'ah is saying, MashaAllah, Subhanallah, and they're accepting it. It's completely wrong. So speaking about things that you have no knowledge of, you should keep your mouth shut. Everybody. I should keep my mouth shut about things I don't know, and everybody should do so as well. So the thing is, one of the greatest sins, and some scholars mention that this is the greatest sin, is to speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you don't know. Right? It's to speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you don't know. Some scholars say this is the greatest sin that somebody can commit. Right? And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he said that which sky can shade me and which earth can give me shelter if I say about the book of Allah what I do not know. Right? What I do not know. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar." Whoever invents a statement, whoever says that I said something but he's lying, then let him get his seat ready in the fire. Right? Let him get his seat ready in the fire. Some people say, oh, this hadith is this. This hadith is authentic. Beware. If you heard from a scholar, that's one thing. But if you're making it up, somebody asks you, Akhi, what's the ruling on this? And you don't know, but you say this is halal and this is haram, then that's a major sin. It's one of the kaba'ir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَا تَصِفُوا أَلِسِنَتُكُمُ الْكَذِبَ هَذَا حَلَالٌ وَهَذَا حَرَامٌ لِتَفْتَرُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, do not allow your tongues to describe things, saying this is halal and this is haram, so that you may invent a lie against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَفْتَرُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ لَا يُفْلِحُونَ. Indeed, those who lie against Allah, they make up things. They invent lies against Allah, they will never succeed. Right? So this is something that you want to stay away from. Right? Don't speak about things that have nothing to do with you, especially the stuff that you don't even know about. Right? Some people, they talk about people's lives, and they talk about things that they don't know. Right? So speaking about Allah, that's even worse. But some people, they talk about each other and they have suspicions. Right? They say, oh, this person is like this person is that, is like that, this person hates me, this person is like this, and they speak without knowledge. And that's something that does not concern us, and we should stay away from them. Also, talking too much. Right? This hadith also addresses the issue of talking too much. The scholars, they mentioned that whoever talks too much, the more mistakes he makes. And the more mistakes he makes, the less respect he has among the people. Don't talk a lot. Some people, they talk all day about stuff that has nothing to do with them. Right? A benefit that the scholars mentioned from this hadith is that you should try to speak less and speak in matters that are of benefit. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah ta'ala, from the early righteous Muslims, he said, مَنْ عَدَّ كَلَامَهُ مِنْ عَمَلِهِ قَلَّ كَلَامُهُ. Whoever considers his speech from his actions, he will speak very little. You know, some people don't think that they're going to be held accountable for everything that they say. So whoever considers his speech from the things that Allah will hold him accountable for, he will speak very little. Right? He will speak very little. So the thing is that you should try to speak in only matters that are of benefit and things that you're sure of and things that concern you. Okay? Another benefit we get from this hadith is using your time wisely. Using your time wisely. And time management is something that is an integral part of every Muslim's life. Right? It's an integral part of Islam. You find in the Quran, Allah He swears by many different examples of time. Allah says, Wal Asr. Allah swears by time itself. Wal Asr. Allah He says, Wal Fajr. And by the early morning. Allah He says, Wal Duha. Duha is the early morning, but a time after Fajr. Allah He says, Wal Layli idha yaghsha. And by the night. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Wal Nahari. And by the day. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by different times of our day. So that proves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants to show us the greatness of these times. And like I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. By time, people are in loss. People are not using their time. People are losing out when it comes to their time. So time management is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reminds us of in many places in the Quran. And Al-Hasan al-Basri, who is one of the students of the Sahaba, Al-Hasan al-Basri, he says a very interesting quote. He says, Ya ibn Adam, he says, O son of Adam, إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ أَيَّام, that you are only days. You, yourself, you're only days. That's what you are. Right? Forget about thinking of yourself as a human being. Think of yourself as days. Your days. Right? Your numbered days. He says, كُلَّمَا ذَهَبَ يَوْمٌ ذَهَبَ بَعْضُكَ. Every time a day passes by, a part of you has passed away. A part of you has went away. Right? Think about your life like this. That your time, that is your life. Right? Your time is your life. The more time you waste, the more of your life you're wasting. Sometimes we don't think about it like that. Okay, Al-Hasan al-Basri, he also says another quote. He says a statement about the Sahaba. He said, أَدْرَكْتُ أَقْوَامًا كَانُوا عَلَىٰ أَوْقَاتِهِمْ أَشَدَّ مِنْكُمْ حِرْصًا عَلَىٰ دَرَاهِمِكُمْ وَدَنَانِيرِكُمْ. He said that I met people, he's talking about the Sahaba. He said, I met some people from the Sahaba, that they were more diligent over their time than you guys over your money, your dollars and your coins, your dirhams and your dinars. Right? Think about it. Some people, they're so adamant when it comes to their money. You own a business, you want to go there on time. You want to make sure your employees are there on time. If somebody's late or something, you're going to hold them accountable. When it comes to your money, when it comes to our money, we make sure that we save our time. You look at people who are watching these motivational videos, they want to hustle, they want to do all of these things, and they want to make money. What are they talking about? Using your time. They talk about the same thing as well. So what about you as a Muslim? You believe in Allah, you believe in the Akhirah, you believe that you're going to be held accountable for every single second. They don't believe that. The non-Muslims don't really believe that. But you as a Muslim, you know that Allah is seeing everything that you're doing and you're going to waste away your time. So time is the most important thing that we have. And the scholars mentioned that this hadith is not just talking about the Akhirah. From the perfection of one's Islam is that he leaves off what doesn't benefit him. The scholars, they mentioned that what doesn't benefit him in this life and the next. So don't think that this hadith means that you have to be in the masjid making dhikr all day. Right? As some people think. Right? That from the perfection of one's Islam is that he leaves off what doesn't benefit him in the dunya as well. Right? Meaning that when you're choosing a career, when you're doing things that when it comes to your dunya, you should choose things that benefit you. Right? You shouldn't waste your time when it comes to the dunya. In other words, you should make money in a halal way. Right? You should be diligent in that, of course. Right? You should try to provide for your family because that's something that benefits you. But you should also leave off from the worldly life what does not benefit you. Right? So this hadith doesn't mean that you have to leave off the worldly life. No, you have to leave off the aspects of the worldly life that doesn't benefit you. But whatever benefits you from the worldly life, going to school, getting a degree, some of us, we need that. Going and get a job, that benefits us. So whatever benefits us in the akhirah and the dunya as well, then we can, strive towards that, as long as it benefits us. And some people, they think that, akhi, it's haram to make money, you have to wear some raggedy clothes, you have to drive a car from the 90s, a car that has, so many problems, you can't buy a new car, you can't have money. This is wrong. Right? This is wrong. There's a dua that we say, many of us, perhaps all of us, we say this. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. Oh, our Lord, grant us the best in this life, in the dunya and in the akhirah. You want the best of both lives. Right? So think about that, right? Islam is not monastic religion where you stay inside of the masjid and you just worship Allah all day. No, you engage with the people, right? You live in this life. But like I said, you should only focus on those things that benefit you. And Ibn Mas'ud, one of the other companions, like I said, he narrated that fourth hadith. Ibn Mas'ud, he said a very beautiful statement. I want you guys to listen to this. Right? If you're sleeping, who's sleeping? Who's sleeping? I see some eyes closed. Who's sleeping? Wake up now. Right? Inshallah ta'ala, I'm not that boring. But just listen to what Ibn Mas'ud, forget about what I'm saying. Listen to what Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu is saying. He said, إِنِّي لَأَمْقُتُ الرَّجُلُ. He says that I hate for a man. Right? He's using a very strong speech. He's saying that I hate this. أَنْ أَرَاهُ فَارِغًا لَيْسَ فِي شَيْءٍ مِنْ عَمْلِ الدُّنْيَا وَلَا عَمْلِ الْآخِرَةِ. He says that I hate to see a man, I hate to see somebody who is just not doing anything. He's not doing anything that's going to benefit him in this world or the next. Ibn Mas'ud is saying, at least do something that's going to benefit you in this life. At least study your schoolwork. At least do something that's going to benefit you here. Right? But what do we find? Some people, they let their days go by. Today is no different from tomorrow. And today is no different from yesterday. Right? The whole day they're binge watching Netflix. They're watching a TV show. You know, some people, their lives are from one episode to the other. Right? With like a little snack break in the middle. Right? One episode to another. So think about it. Some people, it's just video games. As soon as you go home, some of us, we're probably thinking that, my parents are forcing me to be in Monday Night Boost. I want to go home and I want to play video games. Some of us may be thinking this, right? But Ibn Mas'ud, he's saying that I hate to see somebody who is not doing anything. Wallahi, I can't understand that somebody can sit there and do nothing. I see some people, whether it's on the train, whether it's on the bus, or whatever the case, some people sit there and they're doing nothing. How is that even possible? At least try to read something. At least do something that's going to benefit you, right? Especially if you're trying to seek knowledge. Some people, they complain. They say, oh, I want to memorize Quran, but I don't have time, right? People always blame it on time. Don't ever blame it on time. Nobody will ever say that I'm not using the time. Everybody's going to try to put the blame on everybody else but themselves. Everybody's going to say, oh, time is the problem. I don't have time. But you have time to watch that TV show. You have time to watch, to search up the gossip and what's happening with the celebrities. You have time to be on point when it comes to what's happening with Trump on the news and what he said. Right? You know exactly the latest things that are happening on the news, but you don't have time. Right? It's not that you don't have time. Be honest, you don't make the time. Right? Sometimes we look for excuses on everybody and everything but ourselves. Right? You're not making the time. You always have time. Right? It's about making the time. Okay? So the thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us sufficient. Allah will not hold us accountable for what we don't have ability for. Some people, they say, oh, I want to memorize Quran, I want to learn more, but they're not putting in the effort and they're not being honest with themselves. So this hadith is telling us, if you want to be a better Muslim, you want to perfect your Islam, and we can never be perfect. If you want to strive towards that, what should you do? Leave with whatever does not benefit you. Okay? Stop spending your time in stuff that has nothing to do with you. And Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, he says, لَيْسَ تَحَسُّرُ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ إِلَّا عَلَى سَاعَةٍ مَرَّتْ بِهِمْ لَمْ يَذْكُرُ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِيهَا. Ibn Mas'ud, Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, he says the only regret of the people of Jannah is an hour that passed by in their lives in which they did not remember Allah. This will be the regret of the people of Jannah. You're in Jannah, right? Allah has forgiven them of all of their bad deeds, right? You're not going to enter Jannah until Allah, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you His mercy and He forgives you. But the people of Jannah, the only regret that they're going to have is that they could have gotten more good deeds, but instead they spent time, doing things that had no benefit. Okay? And this was the state of some of the scholars. And Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that wasting time is worse than death. Wasting time is worse than dying. Because when you die, you're moving closer towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You're moving closer towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when you waste time, if you're wasting time in something that doesn't benefit you, that brings you further away from Allah, it's making you further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So think about it. Would you rather die than to waste time? That's really what he's saying. Right? You should rather die and lose your life right now than waste time. This is the perspective that you should be having. Right? You should be hard. You should be hungry to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So another principle that the scholars mention is that the more you occupy your time with things that don't have benefit, the less time you will occupy yourself with things that do have benefit. Right? The more time you spend occupying yourself with things that have nothing to do with you, the less time you're going to be spending occupying your things that have benefit. So brothers and sisters, it's not just about the physical acts. You know, even if somebody doesn't have an opportunity to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to worship, even if you don't have the ability to do any physical acts of worship, you can always use your time in a beneficial way. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he says, التفكر في خلق الله أو في نعمة الله من أفضل العبادة. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he says, from the best acts of worship is to just think about the blessings of Allah. That's an act of worship. Imagine, Allah has given you so many opportunities to worship Him. Right? So don't waste your time. Even if you're sitting down, even if you're, you don't have a mushaf on you, you can't read Quran, you can't study, you can't learn something, you can't discuss, at least think about Allah. Right? You know, there's a famous line of poetry, أَلَا كُلُّ شَيْءٍ لَهُ آيَةٌ تَدُلُّ عَلَىٰ أَنَّهُ وَاحِدٌ. That in everything there is for Him a sign that He is indeed one. In everything, indeed, there is a sign that indeed He's only one. So think about that. As a Muslim, I heard a clip, somebody shared it on Facebook, Mufti Menk. Right? Mufti Menk said something funny. He said that, in the particular clip, he said that this morning, I had a pimple on my forehead. And Mufti Menk, he said that in the morning, I had a pimple on my forehead, and he was so worried about facing the people. Some people, they are very conscious. And he made a connection with that statement, right? He made a connection of, with that pimple. Something so, insignificant. You would never think about it. But he said, if I'm so conscious of standing in front of the people with some little defect, what about standing in front of Allah with those deeds that nobody can see and nobody knows about except Allah? Think about the connection that he made. So for a believer, everything you see around you is going to make a connection. Right? It's going to remind you of Allah, even if it's something so small like that, right? So like I said, I'm not telling you to go look at your pimples and try to, extract benefits from that. But the point is, look around you, right? Occupy your mind with beneficial things as well, inshallah ta'ala. Now, in our last point, we're going to mention some traps of shaitan. Shaitan knows this. If shaitan, his goal is to have you commit shirk. If he cannot have you commit shirk, he's going to try to push for you to commit haram deeds, right? Things that are haram. He's going to try to occupy you with things that are haram, right? If he cannot do that, if you're too strong, and if he can't get you to commit the major sins, he's going to try to get you to commit the minor sins. If he can't even get you to commit the minor sins, if you're that strong of a mu'min, he's going to try to get you to waste time. At least he can get you so that you wouldn't commit any good deeds that will bring you closer to Allah. This is how he is. And think about it, he has thousands of years of experience. So let's talk about some of the ways, and inshallah ta'ala, this is our last points. Some of the ways that shaitan has, he has tricked us. And there's a quote that I really like. It says that the greatest trick that the devil has ever played is convincing the world that he doesn't exist. But the shaitan is there. Iblis, he's there. You better be certain about that. And maybe he's not the one whispering to you, but his henchmen are. Right? His people that are working for him, his children, his followers, they're the ones that are whispering to you, the shayateen. It's not just one shaitan, but shayateen, the jinns, all of these people. And from the human beings, there are shayateen as well. I'm just going to give you one example. Shaitan, he tries to make us think that we're doing things beneficial, but they're not beneficial for us. So when we read this hadith, some of us, we may be like, well, you know what? I'm going to start doing things that concern me. Shaitan is going to make you think that you're doing things that concern you, but it really doesn't concern you. I'm going to give you an example of this. There are some Muslims that their entire Islam is based on putting other people down. Their entire Islam is based upon speaking about this sheikh and why he's an innovator and why he's, went off of the path. Immediately when they hear about a scholar or a da'i or anybody or imam of a masjid, immediately they think, does this person have mistakes? Right? They're like a fly that flies around feces. Right? Always around the nasty things. Always concerned with the things that, are filth. Right? This is not how we should be as Muslims. Have good thoughts of people. Right? So the thing is, there's some Muslims, you go on YouTube, any popular sheikh you find around, whether they're in America or abroad, you're going to find some video refuting them one way or another. Right? One way or another. Right? You're going to find so many clips online, and you have people that, there's ongoing debates now of who's on the minhaj and who's not on the minhaj, who is a Salafi, who's not a Salafi, who is a Sufi, who's not a Sufi. No, this is not the way of a Muslim. Of course, there's a need for this stuff. But to occupy yourself with this all of the time, some people do this. All of their discussions are talking about why this sheikh is an innovator and why he's strayed from the path of Ahlul Sunnah. That's it. Am I saying that this doesn't have any place in Islam? Of course. We have to be aware of wrong things. Things that are wrong must not be accepted. But when it comes to spending all of your time and being preoccupied with this is what shaitan wants. Right? Shaitan would rather you continuously talk about somebody you already know has deviated from the path. He would rather you already continuously talk about them. He would rather you do that than to read the Quran or to learn more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he deceives people into thinking that this is something beneficial for them. And wallahi, if you really focus on the mistakes that you have, you will not have time to talk about this sheikh and this scholar and the problems that they're having in this country, in Medina, in Mecca, in Morocco, and in all of these places. You will not have time for that. Right? You're going to have time to focus on yourself. Right? So leave off the things that don't benefit you. Okay? And what you find that a lot of people, when they're engaged in this, shaitan fools them. They think that they're serving Islam by refuting people, but you go on YouTube, there's atheists that are refuting Islam, ex-Muslims that are refuting Islam. Nobody's refuting them. You find a handful of people that are giving the Muslims answers to these doubts that people are putting about Islam. Right? If you really want to support Islam, where are you when these people are spreading doubts about Islam? But no, you're going to find one sheikh, one scholar who has one mistake, and you're going to give a whole hour lecture about that. It's a problem. Right? This is something that is a sickness in Muslims. And like I said, you have scholars who are involved in this. You have du'at, callers to Islam who are involved in this. You have imams who are engaged in this. This is all they talk about. This is their Islam. But part of the perfection of your Islam is leaving off what does not benefit you. Yeah, we have a question here.
Do you advise like staying away from scholars who do this, who spend a long time refuting other scholars? Because how do you know who's in the right? Because for lay people, you want to not fall into something that's an innovation, right?
Of course. Okay, so the brother, he's asking a question. He says, what should you do? How do you follow a scholar? I think you should try to follow a scholar. You should try to follow somebody that's going to teach you Islam, somebody that you feel is the most sincere, somebody who has the best knowledge. Like I said, that might differ from one person to another. But if you are sincere and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you, inshallah ta'ala, you will find that. Remember, you can try to find a sheikh, you can try to find somebody who's going to teach you your entire life, but if Allah doesn't give you tawfiq, you can't find anybody. But you may never search, but you ask Allah, but then they come to you. Right? They come to you. So you have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that first. And like I said, if it doesn't benefit you, don't engage in it. Don't engage. It's that simple. If it doesn't benefit you as a Muslim, if it doesn't bring you closer to Allah, then leave it off. No matter what it is. If it doesn't benefit you, leave it off. And like I said, that you have to be the judge of that. The Prophet ﷺ, he's given us a principle for you to be the judge of what you should let into your mind, what you should let your mind be occupied with. Okay? Another example of how shaitan deceives us is he makes us study Islam, but then again, we're abandoning our obligations. For example, some people, they want to memorize Quran, but they're not taking care of their family. You have some brothers, they have to spend on their family. They're neglecting their wives and their children, and then they want to go abroad and they want to study. That's a problem. That has nothing to do with you if you're not focusing on what does have to do with you, right? You need to focus on those obligations that concern you first and foremost. You have some Muslims, they're engaged, they want to get married, but then they're busy studying how to give zakat on camels. Is giving zakat on camels, is that important? Of course. But you don't have any camels, that has nothing to do with you right now. But what should you be learning? What are the rules and regulations that Islam stipulates when it comes to marriage? Because you're going to get married. If you want to go into business, you got to learn what are the halal things and what are the haram things when it comes to business. Right? You want to go to school, you want to do this, you want to do all of these things, you need to learn about those things that concern you. Right? And what you find is some Muslims, especially when it comes to what's happening in the Muslim world, right? Some people, they know the intricate details of the conflicts that are happening in all over the Muslim world. The turmoil and the fitan. Some people, they're so knowledgeable when it comes to the fitnas. But what about the fitnas that are happening in your own home? Am I saying that those things that are happening abroad are not important? But you need to have priorities. So this hadith, the benefit from this is that we need to prioritize our life. Right? If you're not dealing with the turmoil in your own home, then why are you concerned about what is happening halfway around the world where you can't even change it at all? Right? Think about it. Some people, they're so concerned about the problems that are happening in another country, the fitna that's happening there, but they don't want to change about what's happening in their own lives. That's a problem. That directly goes against this hadith. Okay, some of us, shaitan makes us do something beneficial. We think it's beneficial. And the general rule of these things is that they are beneficial, but for us, they may not be beneficial. Right? If you have to provide for your wife, you have to provide for your children, you have no business spending all of your time neglecting them when you think that you're worshiping Allah, you're making dhikr in the masjid. This is wrong. Okay, yeah, we have a question here, inshallah. Okay, طيب. So inshallah ta'ala, we're going to stop here, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully this is sufficient for us to benefit ourselves. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we all benefit from this. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He continues to make us all sincere and to protect us from all forms of shirk and all forms of sin, and that we do not die except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us of all of our sins. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we perfect our Islam and that we leave off the things that do not benefit us. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? Inshallah. Yes, question here.
Yeah, so in the beginning, so we were talking about which hadith are like sahih or hasan. So let's say if we sincerely think that a hadith is correct, like let's say if it's hasan, right, and we act upon it, but then it turns out that, let's say some scholars who were saying that it's da'if, they were in the right, would we still get rewarded for acting upon that hadith?
Okay, so the thing is that if you have there are many hadiths that some scholars say the hadith is sahih and other hadiths that the scholars say is da'if. So the thing is if you're not qualified to look at it yourself, if you're qualified to look at it for yourself, then it's an obligation for you. If you need that hadith, it's an obligation for you to find out if that hadith is authentic or not. If you have the capabilities. If you study hadith sciences, you have the capabilities of going in the books, scholars have taught you, you're trained to do this, then it's an obligation for you to do so. Right? But if you don't have the capabilities of doing so, then you have to follow a scholar, a hadith scholar that you feel is the most knowledgeable in this field. For example, this hadith scholar, I feel that he's more trustworthy in this field. He studied this longer. I'm going to go with what he says, right? That's what you should do. Follow a hadith scholar that you feel has more knowledge about this field. So, for example, some scholars say this hadith is da'if, but this scholar, I trust him more. I feel like he has more knowledge. That I'm going to go with him. I'm going to act upon this hadith as if it's sahih, as if it's authentic. Then you'll be rewarded, inshallah ta'ala. Is it clear? Inshallah ta'ala. Any other questions? Comments? طيب, so we're going to stop now, inshallah ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله